All right, folks, welcome back to the Breadcrumbs Project as we carry on with this very special effort that we're doing. And going back to 1994 and the mid-'80s, when a lot of I say a lot of that was a stretch. Part of the intelligence community was taking note of what was being done to America. That's where I'll put it right now. This is Dr. John Coleman, who used to work in intelligence field, I'm guessing MI6. He didn't give too much background of where he started, but he said he was in Africa doing the good bidding of an army when he found out he was doing the bad bidding of the Committee of 300. At this point in 1994, the intelligence community knew a lot about the Committee of 300 and the people above them, the 13 families, that they were running 3/4 of the world. They were trying to, but never got successful in controlling China and or Russia. So that has been borne out by history, and also Africa. Whatever they get a hold of Africa, there's going to be a set of people fighting them. So Africa has always been in turmoil, fighting the families and the Committee of 300. So back in 1994, Dr. John Coleman was telling us about the Committee of 300, and I have the book. I have been going through it, and it is just fascinating. It is a fascinating read. I have it in the links below, and it is in the CIA.gov archives. This is not poppycock. So thank you for Anon55 to give credit to up there in playing this, for resurfacing this video, which I really didn't know anything about it. So very, very happy and proud to be carrying on with watching this video, sharing it, and hopefully you people out there are sharing it amongst your communities, so that we understand and have a counter-strike effort within the Q community against these people. And now through the Epstein archives and through the Q efforts, we understand not only are they elitists, but they're degenerates and also occultists, and worshiping the worst of that there is to worship in this world. And we firmly believe that to get into the elite circles, you have to be at some level a Satanist and have done some horrendous things to gain the trust of the billionaire plus community. So yeah, it's all about the money. All right, let's pick back up.
He picked up the documentation for his work from Lord Bertrand Russell, the senior statesman of the Committee of 300. And Lord Bertrand Russell had written a work called The Impact of Science on Society. And if you can ever secure a copy of that book, which I doubt you'll be able to get, you will see in there that he said the world is grossly overpopulated, and we have to get rid of at least half of the world's population, and it doesn't matter how we do it. So the Club of Rome was instituted and organized to start an attack on the world's population, using the United States as the whipping boy. And they came up with a paper called the Zero Growth Post-Industrial Plan for Industry and Agriculture for the United States of America. 3 days after that plan was accepted as official United States policy by James Earl Carter, I was able to, through my intelligence people, get a copy of this insidious document. Basically what it said was that the middle class in the United States of America had to be destroyed, because in the coming push to a world order, the middle class would be the stumbling block, because history had shown that the peasant class in ancient days, when they had revolted, were just easily crushed. There was no resistance. But now had grown a new super class of people in the United States called the middle class, who had long-term employment, who had job security, who were well paid, who could afford to buy the products that were made by the United States and didn't need to buy products from China or anywhere else. And the Club of Rome post-industrial zero-growth paper said this has got to stop. We have to bring down the middle class of the United States. And the way that we will do this, the way that we will accomplish this task, is by crushing their industries. In 1980, based on this report, I wrote a small work, a booklet, called The Death of the United States Steel Industry. And in that I told of a French aristocrat by the name of Etienne d'Avignon. And I'm sure there's not a single steel worker in America out of a job who's ever heard of this man's name. But they put this aristocrat onto the job of destroying first the steel industry. In my book in 1980, I said that by 1985 we would have silent blast furnaces. The rolling mills would be stopped. There would be no more shipbuilding. We'd have thousands of skilled workers who'd passed the skills of their trade down for generations, who were forever dispossessed of their jobs. If you go to the Northeast United States today, ladies and gentlemen, and I've just been up in Cleveland where I had a very good radio address I gave there, you will find that what I said in 1980 has unhappily come to pass. In 1970, the United States had 5,000 ships built by good United States know-how, using good United States steel. 5,000 ships sailing the high seas. Last year, we had exactly 270 such ships. And at least 50,000 steel workers permanently out of a job, jobs that will never come back. What happened?
Understanding what happened. I'm coming to you today from 2026 and saying that this man was right in everything that he was saying. And he raised the alarm bells, and those people that have so much power over our country were able to make sure that this message never got out. They had Americans working against Americans to make sure that our middle class was crushed and that we have an upper class and basically a lower class. And that's where we are. We don't have any skilled tradespeople anymore. We have a bunch of folks that know how to do retail and little else. And our tradecraft has gone around the world, and by every measure has declined. Made in America very much meant something back in the day. I've gone to other countries and have used tools and have used different equipment and know the difference in quality between an American product and a product from elsewhere. So, yeah, this is eye-opening. This is infuriating. This is what happens when you have a political class. So here's my thought. Here's my thought moving forward. Anybody that works for government has to go through a background check and drug testing, except for our leaders. And by God, it should be the other way around entirely. It should be the other way around entirely. Our leaders should have extensive background tests. extensive. And then testing to see if they're adequate to lead a great country. It is ridiculous what is in Congress right now. Ridiculous. Same with the Senate, government in general. It's not the best of the best. It's the controllable of the controllable. So, yeah, this man was spot on. Spot on. Continuing on with Dr. John Coleman. And how eloquent is his speaking? We've lost that as well. The eloquence. Terrible.
Did we suddenly lose our marbles? Did we suddenly lose that great American know-how of getting things done? Did we lack finances? Did we run out of money? No. None of those things happened. What happened was this dastardly Club of Rome had sent their emissaries to the United States to deliberately destroy our steel plants. And they did it by opening the doors of so-called free trade. And everybody who signed the NAFTA treaty and everybody who signs the GATT treaty when it passes is a traitor and a seditionist. Our mighty steel industry is destroyed. Our shipyards are silent. Our skilled workers are permanently without a job. And if you don't believe me, get the report of the Club of Rome. You know, when I came out in 1969 with my report on the Club of Rome, nobody had ever heard of it. And people, when they got it, said, "Oh, this guy's paranoid. There's no such organization. It's probably something to do with the Catholic Church." Well, surprise, surprise, 25 years later, last year, the Club of Rome celebrated its anniversary, and Alexander King, its chairman, stated, "The American people henceforth must get used to the idea that they will never, ever again in their lifetime have full employment." What a scandalous thing that our government is fully cooperating with this organization built up by the Royal Institute for International Affairs to destroy the middle class of the United States and to add to the policies of global genocide. And that brings me to the next question. What is the Global 2000? Once again, when I heard about this policy, it was 3 days after it had been accepted by the United States government as its official policy. And the Global 2000 was a blueprint for mass genocide produced by the Club of Rome. Basically, what the Global 2000 calls for is the destruction of half of the world's population by the year 2050. Hence the title 2000. They built a case based on Bertrand Russell and H.G. Wells' findings that the world was going to be overpopulated, would be a terrible place to live in. That was picked up by a fellow called Robert Strange McNamara, and a stranger individual you're not likely to meet in this world. And this fellow had a conference of all the leading bankers about 12 years ago, and he said the biggest menace facing the world today is the American middle class and overpopulation. He linked the two together. And he said, by the year 2050, this is the state of the world. All of these unfed, unwashed people, no jobs. He said, do we want to live in a world like that? So the Global 2000 was a genocidal plan to take care of the people of the United States who don't have any jobs and who, like Alexander King said, are never going to get their jobs back, and the masses of people in other nations. That is why we had the sudden appearance of AIDS. When I was in the service, I was told there's a CAB experiment, that's chemical and bacteriological warfare experiment, going on in Sierra Leone in Africa. That's a remote corner of Africa, West Africa, just above Liberia. If you look at your map, your atlas, and you'll see where it's located. Why Liberia? Extremely hard country to get to. You have to fly from London. That's the only way you can get there. You land on an island, and then you've got to take a ferry across to the mainland. And of course, all people taking the ferry are heavily scrutinized. And I managed to work my way. I was told the Americans were doing the CAB experiment. I managed to work my way to within striking distance of a small mission station. And what I discovered was that these blacks were coming in from the bush to this mission station with broken arms or an ulcer on the leg or something like that. And they were ostensibly being treated there, but they were dead by the evening. What was actually going on was that a laboratory had been set up using Lassa fever virus. Now at that time, Lassa fever was one of 4 viruses that could jump the human-animal barrier. And it was a deadly virus. They were trying to create a virus that could be mass-produced and it could be sent out through the World Health Organization to get rid of millions of people in the world. But the Lassa fever virus proved uncontrollable. It killed 3 scientists who were working there. So the orders came from Washington, burn the place to the ground, and that's exactly what they did within a radius of 100 miles. They bottled up some of these viruses they'd been experimenting with and took them back to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. There they began again, but again they escaped and killed 3 more scientists. So they incinerated the whole laboratory, sealed it off and incinerated. The same experiments are now going on in Harvard University right now. But they're not using the Lassa fever virus. That has proved to be too tough for them to handle. Instead, the United States government gave millions of dollars to the United States military chemical and bacteriological warfare establishment at Fort Detrick, and they began experimenting with the AIDS virus. I knew about the AIDS 3 years before the word ever came out in the world, in the United States particularly, because of my field work in Sierra Leone. The British government used their Porton Down CAB facility. It's easier to get into the Bank of England vaults than to get into Porton Down. All the deadliest viruses in the world are being crafted there, in pursuance of the goal, the Global 2000, to decimate the world. Shortly after this experiment had finished at Fort Detrick, the World Health Organization started a massive vaccination campaign. They said, for once and for all, we're going to wipe out the scourge of smallpox. They chose Africa and Brazil, launched a massive vaccination campaign. Immediately, AIDS began to appear. Thousands and thousands of people began dying of the strange new virus, which the World Health Organization then said had come from the bite of a green monkey. They forgot to tell you the green monkey's been there for centuries, and he'd been biting people, if he ever did, for centuries, but no disease of that nature had ever occurred. The World Health Organization deliberately took this virus, which was crafted from a series of animal viruses, including Mediavirus sheep, which destroys the brain, which is why you find AIDS patients get dementia probably first before any of the other AIDS-related complex diseases appear. And they began vaccinating innocent people on a massive scale, and they began dying like flies. Why Africa and why Brazil? Because those 2 countries had the biggest black population in the world. And I want to tell the black people of the United States of America, do not trust the Democrat Party. Do not trust government. Do not believe that government is your friend. To them you are dispensable, the same way as we are. Millions of people died. I went through Uganda on an inspection tour, and I saw whole areas decimated where previously there had been small towns and villages. There was not a living soul in sight. And that is going on today. The AIDS epidemic is completely out of hand. It swept the world. It's been swept under the carpet in the United States of America. We were told that this is a disease which is passed by homosexuals. True enough, but that's not the primary cause of it. This is a crafted virus that was spread throughout the world to decimate the population. Coming behind them, and we reported this about 2 years ago in our World in Review news magazine, is the Vibro 19 cholera virus, the deadly killer. You get this cholera in the morning. If it's not immediately treated with massive doses of expensive antibiotics, you'll be dead in a day and a half. This epidemic swept India, carrying away millions of people. I don't know if you've heard of it in the press. I doubt it. Behind that is a deadly strain of malaria, and some of our forces in Somalia contracted this disease. A strain of malaria which acts almost like the HIV virus. It attacks the human immune system. And behind that, the Black Plague. Now, you've had some experience with Black Plague recently. Experiments were conducted in this area and in California with the Black Plague, distributing them, these plague viruses, to definitive areas by means of enfolded scalar waves using extremely low-frequency radiation, which was a warfare technique developed in 1934 by the great Soviet virologist V.A. Gertchev. This is not Buck Rogers stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This is today's deadly truth. So some of the Indian reservations were targeted, and all of a sudden they began dying of Black Plague. And then we were told, well, the harvest mouse droppings are responsible. Well, the harvest mouse has been doing his droppings for centuries, but none of them got the Black Plague before that. But
so do we see, do we see and hear the similarity between the last big event that happened, that they take something and start to spread it themselves and then blame some innocuous animals or something innocuous? So this is a playbook that repeats itself over and over and over again, and it is so that they can inject us with something new. So guys, I mean, this is not new, but it's certainly getting more and more and more dangerous. Thankfully, hopefully, we're becoming wiser and wiser. As you see this video, please like and share this video. Also, the links to Anon's YouTube channel, and this video is in the comments. I mean, not in the comments, but in the show notes, the description below, and also a link to his very important book about conspiracy theory, the Committee of 300. Conspiracy theories are simply that. There's a theory that there's a conspiracy happening against something, someone. And sure enough, there's been a lot of attack against us, taking out and hollowing out our middle class. Guess who got our middle class? China. And bless them for it, by the way. Bless them for it, because they've been through a lot. But they have pulled themselves up. They have taken every opportunity that has come their way. And their country now has a very massive middle class, very few poor people, and very few rich people. So they took the lessons that America lost and picked them up. All right, back to Dr. Coleman for about 10 more minutes. We'll probably have about 6 parts.
what happened immediately following the so-called population control meeting in Cairo? There was a sudden and violent outbreak of Black Plague in India, and it is still going on, and it is not under control. This is all part of the Global 2000 mass genocide plan. I know something about the Black Plague because in my research in the British Museum I discovered that the black Venetian nobility had none of their families or members had ever got the Black Plague. Yet the Black Plague, as you know, swept through Europe and killed half of the population of Europe. But none of their families ever got it. So I began seeking for the answers, and I found them in the Cairo Museum. So people said, well, how come, if these things are true, how are they going to protect themselves? They being the Committee of 300, their servants and their families, they have the means of protecting themselves by certain types of herbal compounds mixed with sugar. And they also have, of course, the protection of extremely low-frequency radiation, where using the technology developed by the great virologist Gertchev, who proved that every living thing on this earth has a vibratory cycle, and he was able to measure the vibratory cycle of various deadly viruses, and by vibrating them double their cycle, he would kill them instantly. So that's one of the defensive weapons that these people have got that will kill the plague if they ever get it. The same technique, of course, will kill cancer cells. But the medical profession, run by the Rockefeller family and all the pharmaceutical companies, do not want you to know this, because when you go in for the doctor, he's going to write you a prescription for a chemical drug. There's no chemical drug benefit out of extremely low frequency radiation vibration. No profit to these people. So that's the Global 2000. Decimate the world's population and particularly hit hard the United States middle class. How are they financing all of this stuff? They're financing it through the Fondi, who I mentioned to you earlier, the Venetian black nobility. Now, why are they called the black nobility? They're called that because of the vileness and the evilness of their deeds. These families date back to the 11th centuries, the Locatis, the Recanatis. They were called, and the Guelphs, by the way, I'll come to them, they're particularly interesting. They were called that because of the evilness of their deeds. They make Lucrezia Borgia look like a Sunday school teacher. They had so much money, which is the outcome of the drug trade, the years of investing, the years of gaining control of every mining, mineral, gold, oil, natural resource of the world, that they can afford to finance these things. So the black nobility are the ancient aristocrats of Venice and Genoa, and they called that because of the nature of their deeds. The black Guelphs were one of the worst of them. Now, interesting enough, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, is a Guelph. She's not a Windsor. This was a title that was evolved in 1935 by her father to put researchers off the track. I like to include myself in that category, although I wasn't doing it then. I was much too young to be doing it, but he didn't like that certain people were getting hot on the track of who this royal family actually was, and so this was put out that they are the House of Windsor. They are not. They're the House of Guelph, and it's important for us to know that, because every time there's a financial crisis, it follows a meeting of the black Guelphs upon the Royal Britannia yacht of the Queen of England, which anchors off the coast of Venice, and all the world bankers meet over there and say, now this is what we're going to do to country X, this is how we're going to control this worldwide situation. And then they go off and give their orders to everybody. So that is the way it is done.
Well, that's the way it is done. So our intelligence communities, our governments, our bankers all know about this. And they've been laughing at us as they manipulate us throughout the centuries. So we are living in interesting times. This has come out, so much has come out, and you see the efforts of the U.S. government now that is completely counteracting all the damage that the Committee of 300 has done. So one of the processes that's so important in our Q community, our anonymous community, is declassification, what we call declass. And so this is happening, and this is part of declass. This information and the constant churn of information that is coming out that is making these evil people bubble to the surface. So this is a good stopping point right now. If you have not heard of the black nobility, well, now you have. Start to get to know them. Again, links for this speech and links to his book, The Committee of 300, are in the description below. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. I'm very good about answering those. And thank you for watching. And we'll see you Monday. So this is 5 days a week. Today is Friday. It's Friday. It's Friday. Got the weekend coming up. A little bit of work tomorrow, and then Saturday afternoon and Sunday off. So thank you all for watching, and we will catch you next time here on the Breadcrumbs Project. Please subscribe and like the video. I would appreciate it. Bye.